Ganze Liebe am des Hemsals in genessen ja. I am sending this last message to whoever might be listening. American, British, German, I don't care. Just listen to me and heed my warnings. My name is Arnold Richter. I'm a brigade Funnerer in the Waffen SS of the glorious fatherland. We were sent to Ireland in the year 1941 to construct an air base for our great Luftwaffe to assist in the invasion of the United States of America. I am currently trapped in a submarine on the ocean floor, surrounded by an ancient horror that I cannot barely comprehend. I was placed in charge of an expedition to a small island in the North Atlantic on May 21st, 1941. We were to build an airstrip and a small base for our long-range bombers to bomb the cities of North America's eastern coast. Our most important objective, however, was to build a deep concrete bunker for the storing of our greatest superweapon. Although I don't fully understand its mechanisms, I know that it's the only one of its kind in the world, and it utilizes the most basic structure in the world to destroy a city in a single strike. I commanded a section of the best men in the SS and Luftwaffe, all of them veterans of the fiercest fights in our many conquests. We brought along bulldozers, a mobile crane, fire trucks, and dozens of tools, from shovels to jackhammers, and more than enough concrete to fill a lake. But I see. We sat aboard the Bismarck, the greatest ship ever built by the Kriegsmarine. She was massive and could move at a speed of 30 knots. It guaranteed safe and comfortable passage to our destination. Our convoy was made up of 2 heavy cruisers and a submarine, the U-2550. The cruisers left us when we reached the Atlantic Gap, but the submarine was to stay with us to the island and remain in the bay carrying the bomb until the storage bunker was completed. I commanded 2 platoons of crack SS soldiers, 40 men and officers armed with the latest weapons. Our voyage was uneventful for the most part, aside from one incident which now seems like an ominous portent of things to come. As we neared the island, one man had a nervous breakdown. He had fought in Poland, France, and Russia, killed dozens of men, women, and children, and yet the very thought of the island had him quivering in his black filtzka. We managed to calm him down, but he begged to be allowed to stay on the ship when we landed. Considering the man's mental state, it was decided that were he ordered to go ashore, he'd cause more trouble than he was worth, and was allowed to stay behind. As soon as we were close enough, all 39 men boarded the landing craft and headed for shore. The water was thick with sargo seaweed, but it felt like there was something else preventing our boats from reaching shore. When we had moved 5 feet ahead, we seemed to move backwards too. After a grueling hour, when the water was nearly deep enough for the door to be lowered for the men to climb out, the strange backwards current let go of us. I shudder in retrospect to think of what that current might have been. As soon as we left the boats, the skippers backed off the beach and returned to the ship for our supplies. Now we took full stock of our surroundings. The island, while only a few miles wide, it was almost 5 leagues long. In the center was a grassy plateau raised 20 yards up from the beach and accessible only by a small road leading through the thick forest surrounding it. The high tide line, marked clearly by a thick layer of seaweed, was approximately 40 yards up the beach, leaving a good 200 yards of rocky beach until the thick coniferous jungle ended the beach. When we had our machines and supplies, we drove off to the road. It was made by a group of miners in 1939, hoping that there was gold in the hills. They had cleared and flattened the entire top of the central hill before realizing that there were no valuable minerals here. The plateau was about 1,000 feet long and 200 wide. We began to set up our prefabricated buildings and prepare the ground for a runway. The planes would be brought in later by a force set to relieve us as soon as the runway was flight-worthy. Our bulldozers found the ground was astonishingly difficult. It's completely flattened, taking an hour to get 10 feet of the runway flat enough for planes. I decided to send out scouts to ensure that our aerial photographs taken by the mining company were still accurate. Reports from passing submarines said the island was entirely deserted, but it never hurts to be careful. Snow, Suresh, it was necessary. No, I be a war, no, never, it's not perfect. Nurse the sheep and all of their own nest meat likes it, and it was so I feel or fat. After only a few hours of waiting, the scout team sent north along the beach returned. They were panting, having run the whole way back. When presented with chairs, one sat down and immediately fell fast asleep. The other, a Schultz by the name of Adolf Wagner, reported a strange cyclopean structure. It had a short, rounded tower, only about 10 feet high. At the bottom was a wooden staircase lit by lanterns and moving in a downward spiral to the stone of the cliff it was perched on. As a former student of architecture, he was able to assure me that it followed no school of architecture known to him. He said that the location of this strange edifice was at the island's northernmost point, unreachable from the plateau due to the thick forest, and obscured on the beach by the island's joint and a point where the forest descended to the ocean. I, of course, assumed that this was some sort of allied base meant to help close the Atlantic Gap. Odd, considering the island's remoteness, After meeting with the subordinates, we concluded that they wouldn't suspect our presence on the island and would take a long while to get mobilized. We mustered a platoon, and not needing the services of the two tired scouts, beaches being astoundingly easy to follow, allowed them to stay behind. The whole group was prepared for fierce combat and armed with the greatest weapons ever created by Germany. We had MP40s, G41s, and even some of those new paratroop rifles. Loaded into 3 trucks, we drove down the beach for a good hour before we reached the bend. It was a gentle curve for a half a mile, then suddenly jolted backward like the joint of an elbow. Rounding the joint, we were able to see the point where the trees reached the waterline. Disembarking, we quickly moved into the forest, going just deep enough into the trees to be unseen by any enemy sentries. As we moved slowly through the thick woods, we felt rain begin to fall. Soon, drenched and covered in pine needles, we reached the edge of the tree line and were able to behold the building for the first time.